So hopefully some of these concepts will be information that become part of the up-to-date conditioning that will inspire a movement that was different to the movement that was there before. The movement we're looking at today is a movement of doing what you feel like, rather than what you think you should and shouldn't do. Now, let me just add in that what you feel like is not necessarily limited to the strongest sensation in the body. That will be one component of what you feel like. The working mind, which is not the thinking mind that says, this is what I should do because of this outcome that I believe I am defined by. The working mind also exists. And the working mind will contribute some information into the biological feeling. So you might be really hungry. That is a biological feeling of hunger. And there might be no food in the cupboard except for a cake. And the shoulds and shouldn'ts will say you shouldn't eat it. Right? No questions about it. You shouldn't eat it. And if we're running from the shoulds and shouldn'ts, that's what will drive the show. If the shoulds and shouldn'ts are strong enough, then the feeling. And if the feelings, if the shoulds and shouldn'ts are there, and we generally live that way, and the desire for the cake is strong enough and we eat the cake, then the shoulds and shouldn'ts will kick in and say, you shouldn't have done that. And you would have eaten the cake, but you wouldn't be eating it with full pleasure. You'll be feeling shameful and guilty. And afterwards, for an extended period of time, you'll be thinking, why did I do that? And I shouldn't have done that. However, if the shoulds and shouldn'ts have fallen away, if the hunger is there and the cake is there, your working mind might be there and say, well, actually, you've got high blood sugar. And so we'll look at the cake, and it won't say you shouldn't eat the cake from an attachment to outcomes, which is what the thinking mind says. The working mind will just put the information into the system. When I suggest we move based on what we feel like, that doesn't mean let's forget about what the working mind says. Well, actually, you've got high blood sugar, and that's a very sugary cake, so don't eat it. Not you shouldn't eat it, because shouldn't is basically because it's a belief more than a good understanding. It's a belief based on an attachment to an outcome. The working mind says, well, I'm just giving you the information that says you have high blood pressure. If you eat that high blood sugar, if you eat that cake, it's definitely not a good thing for the high blood sugar. That's it, giving you the information, do what you like. The thinking mind doesn't say do what you like. The thinking mind says you're a very bad person if you do that. And we tend to believe our thinking mind. So there can also be an intuition. So there are several faculties within the biological makeup of the body that contribute to your feeling. The working mind, you might feel really tired in the morning and say, I don't want to go to work. And yet the working mind says, that's understandable, but if you don't go to work, you'll lose your job, and the money you get from the job pays for your mortgage and things. And if you don't have that, then your family is going to be... Now, the thinking mind can masquerade as the working mind, but it will just basically say, I have no other choice but to go to work. You should go to work. And it won't honor the tiredness. And if there is an honoring of the tiredness, there will be I'm tired and I have no freedom in life. So it becomes more of a going to work is in opposition with the tires. So the thinking mind causes all sorts of problems. The working mind will say, well, you can not go to work. Actually, you're free not to go to work. But there will be a consequence to that. And I'm just telling you what the consequence is. But the working mind will also say, and I don't really know what the consequence is. If you don't go into work, you may find that your circumstance will put certain pressures on you because you don't have an income, and you will find an alternative job that you like much better. But you may not. So don't think that that's an inevitability. Consider your options and do what you feel like. So the working mind is very much in line with do what you feel like. The thinking mind says, don't be ridiculous. You can't go through life doing what you feel like. You have to do what I tell you because I know best. I know where your happiness is to be found, and just listen to my strategy and you'll be okay. At some point, you'll realize, well, I've been listening to that strategy for my whole life and it hasn't really worked wonders so far. So if we get enough hints as to why starting to listen to what you feel like, starting to see things as they are, can be freedom from a certain prison, then a movement that will experiment. I'm not suggesting that you collapse all of your shoulds and shouldn'ts in one day and see how it goes. Start with small things that are manageable for your system, and as they start to demonstrate that doing what you feel like rather than what you think you should or shouldn't do, once it starts to demonstrate undeniable benefit, then you can move to the next layer of shoulds and shouldn'ts. If you tried to do it all at once, it'd just be too scary for the system that is attached to outcomes and believes that life would suddenly collapse into a vortex if you stop doing what you should and shouldn't, what you think you should or shouldn't do. So let's go back to seeing yourself more truly. Seeing your shortcomings. One of the biggest attachments that we have in life is the attachment to love. Attachment to love of the other, whether it's your friends, whether it's your family, whether it's your partner, whether it's people at work, strangers on the street. There is this attachment to love that stems from the root of shame that really says, I am not good enough. The deeply ingrained sense I'm not good enough, which I've described several times before as, in this teaching, I put forward that as the original error, the original seed of personal doership, which says, I have been thrown out of the womb, I have been thrown out of God into this life, and we assume it's because we're not good enough on a very primal level prior to cognition. And that idea that I've been thrown out because I'm not good enough then becomes our sense of lack, our sense of worthiness. And so we are seeking confirmation from the other that is confirmation that says you're good enough. It's why we're so obsessed with seeking it from the other, because deep down, we actually believe we're not good enough. So if the other tells us we're not good enough, we feel terrible, not because they've told us we're not good enough, but because it reinforces our own belief that we're not good enough. Once we know ourselves to be something, if we know that we are a very accomplished, artist or mathematician or cook, and someone says, your cooking is really rubbish. If you are absolutely confident in your cooking ability because of the feedback that you get from people, and you don't doubt yourself, you have shortcomings, but actually overall you think that you're a pretty good cook, and then someone comes and tells you you're not a good cook, if your confidence is and there's no doubt about yourself, then that person is just seen as being one of those people, one of those people that can't help themselves but criticize, can't help themselves but get things wrong. And it doesn't affect you. It's like, oh, okay. So, if you're an expert giving a lecture, and then there's a person up there who clearly doesn't understand the subject beyond a very rudimentary level, and they're there trying to tell you how, physics works. And so the physics expert doesn't, it's like it's understood, oh, they don't know. And if there's a confidence there, if the person is confident with what they're delivering, they're not rattled. So we get rattled when the other tells us we're not good enough because we actually believe it ourselves. So it's got nothing to do with what the other tells us, but it's more about our internal structure. So when the other tells us use the same words, if we have a different internal structure, it's got a completely different reaction. So clearly it's got nothing to do with what the other says, but rather with how that is received. And it can be radically different in two different people or in the same person if they change. So very clearly, our happiness, our peace of mind, our comfortableness, our lack of doubt is not to be found in the other, not to be found in circumstance. It's to be found based on our own internal structure. And if the internal structure is such that the doership and attachment to outcome, the primal belief I am not good enough has fallen away, by default, what's left is a sense of self-contentment, self-fulfillment, which means no doubt about oneself, even knowing that we have shortcomings. So because we're seeking love from the other, from a deeply ingrained root that is forcing us to seek love from the other, whenever the other doesn't confirm us, it's taken as an attack on who I am. So if we can start to see, why doesn't the other like me? And acknowledge, yes, I completely agree. I can see if I'm argumentative all the time, and the other doesn't like hanging around, doesn't like having interactions because I'm argumentative or you're argumentative. And so the other sort of moves away. And at first we might take it personally. And what we will want to do is blame the other for not liking me. There's a great thing in spiritual circles, which is love me for my shadow. I think that's absolute nonsense, right? To want someone to love you for your shadow is ignorance. I can accept someone's shadow. I'm not going to appreciate someone's shadow. I can accept my own shadow. I'm not going to appreciate my own shadow. Now, often this nuance gets overlooked because we're told in the teachings you have to love yourself. The problem is you don't love yourself. You're criticizing yourself. So then someone sees their shadow and they say, I love my shadow. because I love my whole self. What they really mean is I see my shadow and I accept it. I don't resist it. To think that your shadow is great is not really seeing things as they are. Now I'll go back to shortcomings. To see your shortcomings and say, I love my shortcomings, is missing the point. It's, I see my shortcomings. I understand that they can't be different. I understand that my shortcomings are part of my genes and up-to-date conditioning. I don't resist my shortcomings. I love myself, we can say, even with my shortcomings. That's very different to loving my shortcomings. So to want someone to love you as you are means love my shortcomings. And the fact is that sometimes someone's shortcomings are such that the other isn't going to appreciate them. And when the other doesn't appreciate our shortcomings, we then tend to make it about the other being wrong. Oh, you judge me, and that's probably true, because a lot of people do judge when the other doesn't deliver pleasure to them. And you're the one that's wrong. So what I'm hoping we can do here is explore our shortcomings with the right attitude to them. So if I see that I am irritable and that my irritability is painful for someone that is around me, and the person says, look, you get very irritable and it hurts me. What I would like to think that my attitude would be is to say, I completely agree. I completely agree how my irritability can be painful for someone who's exposed. So if that person says, your irritability is painful for me and I'm going to have to move away from it, say, I couldn't agree more. Like, if I were in your shoes, I'd do the same. Like, high five. Well done for honoring what you feel, which is seeing the situation as it really is. And hopefully, if I see it the way it is, I'm not going to defend my irritability and say that it's somehow good. Similarly, if the other person says, your irritability really hurts me, I want you to change. Then you'd say, well, I can completely understand that the irritability hurts you, and it makes complete sense that you would prefer that irritability isn't there. I can see that the irritability is a shortcoming of mine, and it doesn't deliver great things most of the time. Irritability, and people get hurt. Now, it's not my intention to hurt someone, but I see it happens. It's a happening based on my makeup and how circumstance turns out. So I completely get that that's the case, and I can understand that your preference is for there to be more pleasure in your life. And let's not even say it's about an attachment on this, just a preference, which makes complete sense. And I say, I see that this irritability adds pain in my life, because I would have a preference that I'm laughing all the time instead of getting irritable, which would then be delivering pleasure to you, which is pleasure to me. So even I would like the irritability to not be there. But unfortunately, I have seen this for months or years, and it doesn't change. It hasn't changed. Now, I'm completely open to changing today, but I'm not holding my breath. I'm not getting in the way of it changing. I have been open to it changing in the past, such that I have made efforts to be different. And at a certain point, I saw that the efforts were turning into an attachment. And so I stopped, and I continued to have a healthy willingness for it to change. And in fact, even acknowledge it will be a great benefit if it changes. However, having seen that up to now, having done whatever I can to improve that, it hasn't improved, I can't tell you I'm going to change. I tell you sincerely, I would love to change. It will be of benefit to me. So I'm not saying this to hurt you or to be cruel to you. I'm just saying it as an assessment of what is. You want me to change. I'm very willing to change, except the change hasn't happened, and I'm not going to go through life thinking that I have to make the change happen. And more importantly, thinking that unless the change happens, I am somehow getting in the way of my own happiness. Because I don't believe that the pain that is delivered to you when I get snappy is your unhappiness. I see that as pain in the moment, your destiny being delivered. I see it as pain for me, my destiny being delivered. And it makes complete sense that just because I say it's just pain and not your unhappiness, your happiness is not dependent on pleasure or pain. Just because I say it's not your unhappiness doesn't mean that I'm saying you have to stay there in the situation receiving pain. If it's your destiny and your genes and up-to-date conditioning to conclude this pain is unnecessary and it hurts me, so I'm going to move away, then I say that's a fantastic assessment and a great conclusion. So I'm 100% all for that.